Hello, Hot Metal Bridge Faith Community. I am Pastor Erin Jones. Welcome to this new thing that we are trying. You are used to, in this space, having just me talk at you for, however long the Spirit moves me. But today and throughout the month of June, we thought we would try something a little different. June marks Pride Month, this time that we have set aside as a society to intentionally recognize and celebrate the LGBTQIA plus community. And if you have no idea what any of those letters mean, that's okay. We are celebrating the queer community, is another way to put it. People who have different sexual identities, gender identities, ways of expressing themselves other than straight heterosexual ways. We are doing this, I recognize, in the midst of a racial justice uprising that is happening throughout our country, and I want to celebrate the fact that it feels like we're in a moment where maybe some movement is happening on that front. And so it might feel weird to do these things at the same time, and yet Pride Month exists because Black trans women, specifically, protested and rioted at Stonewall. And we are here and are able to have this diversity of voices because of their sacrifice and because of them standing up. And so hopefully what we do honors that and highlights how racial justice and queer justice are all intertwined. So all of that being said, I'm so thankful to have with us today Aubrey DeVito, who is a member here at Hot Metal, and delighted to lift up her story. So I'm going to ask her to do something, I'll model it. I'm going to ask her to give her identifiers and pronouns, which, as we recognize that people have a diversity of ways in which they identify and live in the world, these labels that we all carry for better or worse, we just want to recognize that there are different ways people identify. So I am a cisgender, which means my biology and how I identify line up. White, straight woman, and I use she, her, and hers for my pronouns. So if you are ever referring to me in the third person, you can say she. Aubrey, would you like to introduce yourself, give your all that, and then how long you've been at Hot Metal, things like that?
Oh, sure. So I'm just first and foremost honored to be a part of this. It's a beautiful thing to celebrate amongst and amidst what's going on right now. It's beautifully put how you said that. So you're right. Everything seems to tie back and everything's kind of connected, and to be able to sit here with you and celebrate this through a church is something I never thought that I would be able to do, but here I am. And like Pastor Erin said, I'm Aubrey DeVito, and I am a cisgender white gay woman, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And how long have you been at Hot Metal? I mean, people know you because you're this wonderful
There for a while.
presence there for a while, and you are always so welcoming and extroverted.
Try. So I've been there for 8 years. One of the very first things that Danielle and I did together when we first started dating, which was almost 8 years ago, was attend the homeless ministry together. We volunteered, and then I started coming to the services shortly thereafter. So about 8 years.
Wow, that's so great. And I will say Aubrey was one of the very first people I met at Hot Metal because she served on the pastoral nominating committee. So if you hate me and hate what I'm doing,
blame me. No.
Yeah, blame Aubrey. But it was her, I mean, the whole committee, but her, you really stood out both to me and to Tim, my husband, when he met you as this beacon of authenticity, and the fact that you were out and proud and loved your church really signaled to us that Hot Metal was a place where we would feel comfortable being ourselves, and especially because we're committed to that sort of open and affirming stance. And so you and others on the call committee, the nominating committee, were signals to us that, like, oh, okay, we could do this. So I just want to thank,
that's great.
yeah, for that presence. And I'm so, and which is partly why I would feel like I could ask you to do this weird guinea pig thing with me.
Absolutely. Two things I'm passionate about, like you just mentioned, were, you know, obviously my journey through this, which we're going to get into, but being proud of who I am and having no apologies for being a gay woman and being married to my partner, my better half, Danielle. I will always speak with great enthusiasm and authenticity about that. But then the other half of that is Hot Metal Bridge Faith Community. They are the group of people there and the congregate. Everything that church stands for is true to who I am and to the core of me. So I'm very happy to do this.
Well, thank you so much for that. How about we go to the beginning of your story? Tell me where you grew up, what your faith life was centered in, and maybe what that looked like in terms of diversity around you.
Sure. So when I look back, it's two main sections of my life. The first was K through about fourth grade, and that's Terre Haute, Indiana, which flat cornfields, rural, not much going on in Terre Haute, Indiana. And then both of my parents are from around Pittsburgh, the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And we moved back when I started fifth grade, and that was in Clinton, PA, which is also very rural, very country. And it was a beautiful place to grow up in because a lot of farms on my road. So there's just a lot of like outside fun times. But in terms of diversity and understanding diversity, being shown it or anything in front of you, no, there wasn't any of that. And it was difficult, the religious aspect of my upbringing, because both my parents were raised strict Catholic, and my dad was an altar boy. He was very much so exposed to the Catholic Church, and my mom was too. And so when they had children, my sister and I, they didn't introduce religion into our youth. It wasn't something that was, they didn't have the best experience. That's their story to tell, but they didn't expose my sister or I to any sort of religion. So a lot of the questions that you have naturally growing up as you get older, you kind of seek your own sources of knowledge. At one point, one of my friends had bought me a youth Bible, and that's where I started to try to go to look for some answers. But when there's no guidance behind that, you're kind of reading something that you're not really getting the gist of. And I also remember we always prayed before meals. So that brought in some questions like who are we praying to and what are we praying for? And then I kind of adopted that into my own life. I started realizing that, you know, there's this feeling that there's a bigger purpose and presence to why we're here and what we're here for. And so I would pray, and then not until I got older did that kind of come conflicted with understanding my sexuality and my limited knowledge of God and religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great when we kind of leave our kids out without any context. They're just like picking up random pieces from society, right? And trying to piece it together.
Correct.
And there's a lot of negative messages out there. And so I'm sure that was.
The funny thing is that since my childhood was based in Indiana and family was back here, when we come to visit, my grandma DeVito, who is the very strict Catholic and one of my favorite people in the world, was the one kind of pushing the religious aspect. And it wasn't that all is welcome, come as you are. It was, you're going to hell because you're not baptized, and don't come up and receive communion when you come to church with me on Christmas Eve because that's a sin. So I'm sitting in the pew wondering, what did I do? I'm hungry. I want some gifts of God. But I couldn't go. I couldn't go up there. So then I started to have this skewed relationship. And it just kind of like molded itself into what it became when I, like I said, started figuring out my own sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a memory of when you first maybe realized like putting on a different label of sexuality?
Yes. So one of the things when we did move back here in Clinton, PA, I had a group of friends who were heavily involved in their youth group. And that was the one of my friends who bought me that youth Bible. And around that same time, it's kind of when you start recognizing the opposite sex if you're heterosexual or the same sex.
Yeah.
But if you're not if you're not exposed to it, it gets very confusing because I never had the conversation with anybody where they actually came to me and said that they were gay, or there was no one in our school that was out. So in terms of figuring out that what you're actually feeling is an attraction to the same sex, what you're really going on in your head is saying, why don't I feel the same way about the most popular football athlete as all my friends do? And I started to just learn behaviors of trying to fit in, right? Of this kid's really cute and, smart and what all the stuff. And I should like him. Why don't I like him? But I'm just going to like him because that's what everyone else is really doing. And around that same time, I was watching an award show and Rosie O'Donnell was giving an award. And as silly as this sounds, it was the first time in my life that there were very few gay figures in the media, and there was no portrayal of it really on any shows that I watched. That didn't exist then. I really dated myself there.
Hey, Rosie and Ellen were the two. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Rosie and Ellen. And Ellen was cast out from the media. She lost her show. And then Rosie, I mean, that's a different podcast, the other thing for another day, but she was giving an award. And I realized for some reason, I just had this idea, oh my God, what if I'm gay? Like I knew that she was, and here she was on the show. And I'm like, it first dawned on me what that means, that a sexual attraction or an attraction to the same sex. And then there's this figurehead. And I remember, and it can make me cry right now, but that I burst out in tears and I shut the TV off. And I remember praying so hard that that wasn't the case. And it was a profound moment. And I remember it vividly because it was like putting a mirror up. Like, here's this person who's probably enduring so much backlash for her lifestyle. And here I am running from it. But face to face, I just broke down and cried and prayed so hard for it to not take it away from me, get it out of my mind, get it off of my chest, and don't let this be me, please.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And all that, right in that moment, all that negative messages that you had picked up from, from society, from church, from, what all around you come flooding in that moment.
It's hard because when you're not exposed to it and your only exposure to church is you can't do this or you can't be that because that's a sin, you'll go to hell. That is the only other thing that I'd heard in my church experiences is if you're gay, you are going to hell. This is wrong and it's a sin. And I think that the people I love and the people I consider family, not knowing this about me and me just trying to figure out for myself, it was kind of like, how can this be so? How can this be something that I'm now grappling with when I didn't ask for this? I didn't choose to have these thoughts or feelings. So why does this even exist?
Yeah, I know that I am a good person, a good, like everything else about me I feel like is maybe on track, and why this piece that's gonna throw me into hell, right?
Exactly. And I mean, from that point forward, just to try to give a more well-rounded view, I did try to pray it away. Like I tried to say, if I don't focus on it, because I wanted that love and relationship with God. And even though I didn't have maybe the foundation of church, I knew what that was. And I knew that that was something that I wanted. And I felt that was important. And so I did not feel as though I could have A and B, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship with God, and also accept and come to terms with that I could be gay. So for a very long time, like the biggest burden you could think or rock you could carry on your chest, I continued living this, you know, heterosexual, outwardly, inwardly repulsed and trying to figure it out just so that I felt that I could be loved by God.
Oh, I'm so sorry that that was the message, like that was reinforced, right? Like that you felt and that was reinforced.
And I think that's why I want to be so outspoken, because that's a very lonely, dark place. You don't, especially then, I didn't have any role models or mentors or anybody that I knew was gay or anybody that I really trusted with this secret, because I thought that it was so immense that I would be judged and criticized for it. So you're in this realm where do I turn and who do I talk to? And you just continually see dead ends. Um, but thankfully, that's not where the story ends.
Yeah, yeah. What made you? What happened? You know, you said you're holding this A and B, right?
Yes.
For a while, you tried to say, okay, I'm going to prioritize my relationship with God and trying to pray it away. What made you switch to, you know what, this is who I am?
This is who I am piece is like, that's a very long process of figuring out.
Yeah,
But
right.
so I had, not to get into too much detail, but I had a boyfriend, and for all intents and purposes, like it should have been like young love in love.
Mm-hmm.
And about a year into dating him, I just realized it wasn't fair to him and it wasn't fair to me. And I just didn't feel the ways in which I felt like I should by that point about him. And I broke up with him, and it didn't even, I mean, I was okay. Oh my God. Now I don't have to make up a story.
Other reasons, but yeah.
And so at that point, I was 16 or 17, and very confused. So, because I had no one to turn or talk to. And at that time, I was still praying that this wouldn't be the case. And I ended up going, long story short, because I could definitely be long-winded, ask Danielle.
That's okay.
I met this woman, this girl at the time, and we became friends. And that friendship was a bit different than my other friendships and my other best friends. Long story short, this girl and I, she ended up, there was this discussion between us that basically like, I like you. And I got very scared. I remember feeling like this was the first time in my life, all the things that my best friends were talking about with boys, like butterflies and excitement and this anticipation, is the first time I ever experienced in my life when I would see this girl. And that was very scary to me, because again, I had nobody to talk to about it. And I didn't know if this girl was just trying to, you know, play games or make me feel like out me and like have me be this like joke. I was very, very fearful. And again, I mean, all on top of that is praying to God, why do I feel this way? What is going on inside of me? Why do I, if we're created in your image, why am I holding and harboring these feelings when they're supposed to be wrong? Like, what is that? Is this a test to see if I hold this in for my lifetime, then I'll pass a test? Because to me, loving at that point, I think I started to become angry, because loving somebody, love is the most powerful thing in the world to me. And I think that's one of the biggest teachings of Christ is love thy neighbor. And when you love someone in their truest form, like you're not saying it because you think you need to, or you're hiding a secret, but because you truly love or in love with them, that to me is a greater, more powerful, beautiful thing than it would have been to love a man and try to, as a lie.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so this female came to visit, and she ended up kissing me. And I think that oftentimes in everyone's life, you can look back and see a crossroad or a clear time in your life when your path went like
Yeah.
curved off. You're like, now I understand this about me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, gay. But really, I mean, it solidified everything. The first time a girl kissed me, I knew, and I recognized that there wasn't, for so many years, I felt like something was wrong with me.
Mm.
And for something to not be wrong with me, but to also figure something out that is so huge, it's like this, oh my gosh, like thunder clouds coming together. It's like the most beautiful thing you can imagine and the worst thing you can imagine coming together as one.
Yeah. Oh, what a heavy moment to have, right? What should have been like a great time, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
right, first real kiss, first, I mean, for, this understanding of yourself, right? We want to celebrate those moments, and to have it literally clouded by this fear or other negative messages. Wow, what a heavy.
Absolutely. And then you're experiencing your first love, and you
Mhm.
can't tell anybody. And no, not only anybody, but then I started getting angrier with God because I felt like, well, this is true now. This is something that's true about me. And I knew that definitively at that point. And I thought, why in the world? And this still makes me so sad to think back at, 17-year-old, 18-year-old Aubrey thinking, why would I be born and nobody would choose this? Nobody would choose to have these thoughts and feelings or to be gay, in my opinion. And then here I am thinking still, if I died the next day, I'd be going to hell
Mm.
because of who I'm choosing to love, not hate or, have this horrible, this life where I'm not living a good life or trying to live a good, with quote unquote terms like Christian life, but like
Yeah.
choosing to love, like, and it just became this battle in my mind and heart of where can I bring these two things together? Because
Mm.
at that point they were very much so then created to be separate and not equal.
Mhm. How did you keep trying to put them together? And once you come to terms with that, once you say, you know what, it is more authentic and more, um, uh, better to be fully myself and fully in love with a woman. How did that impact or influence finding a place where you could have some sort of faith or relationship with God?
I think that the process for me went through first my closest friends, right? So I think I kept the religious side of it pretty away from my heart. um, I didn't know how to tackle that one because my only experience had been in Catholic churches. And even as now then a young adult, I kind of could sense that that was going to be a real big uphill battle. I wanted to
You're
stay
like, I don't want to do this with it.
yeah.
It's too
I'm
much.
like, I want to tackle this. But I didn't have a better understanding of different faiths, like,
Mm.
Presbyterian, Methodist, all the different denominations that existed, and the ways in which, and their viewpoint, homosexuality stood in their eyes. And so at that time, when I was like I said, now young 20s, early 20s, I think that it became more about my family finding out and talking to them about who I was and who I was still as a person. I'm Aubrey, but I just am gay. Like,
Yeah.
gay version
That's
of
always
what
been
you
true.
saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is not, it's super complicated. And there's so many layers to it because I think that my most immediate family members had their own journey with coming to terms, because even then when they found out and we had these discussions, it was still, you couldn't get married. There was then, if you couldn't get married, there was no talks of you having children, because how are you going to have children? And then there was, you're going to be chastised and cast away from society. And like, there's just all these fears that come in because, you know, naturally the people that love you want you the best for you. And I think that especially 15 years ago, that was get married to a man and have children. You know, that was just what the viewpoint was, is in my family.
Yeah.
And I had to just uproot all of that and say, no, I can still have that. And then when it finally, the dust settled, and I think, you know, here's my family, they still love and accept me, and they're going on their own journey. Well, now here's this other pocket of Aubrey with her faith journey.
Mm.
And I got to the point where I tried a couple churches, and it can be quite intimidating if you go in there knowing you're trying to see if I'm going to be accepted for who I am, and have that label on you right away, versus just filtering in and then figuring out that they're against it. Because then you'd want to, then that would have lost the purpose. So that was, you're talking like 10 more years of time between figuring out that I was gay and finding my path and back and towards a relationship with God.
Yeah. And I think that's why, right, it is so important for churches to have clarity around, right, where they stand. I don't want to say on this issue, right, because people aren't issues, but right,
Yeah.
about welcome and about being open and affirming. Because, right, so I have heard of so many people who like are maybe wanting to find a place, but they just don't know, right? And the hurt and the fear and the intimidation is too much to even get through the door, right?
Absolutely. Especially if their experience coming out was met with more hostility, or they were kicked out of their homes. I mean, why would you, I mean, it takes so much strength to be able to keep picking yourself back up and finding those paths that suit you and that are right for you. And that's why I am so passionate about this at Hot Metal, because it is open and affirming, but I also want to be an outlet and a resource for anybody who is questioning that, because it can be written and not lived into. And it can be said and not.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that that's, if I were to look back on my younger self and say, what could she have used to help her through this? That's what I would want the embodiment of myself and the church I belong to have.
That's beautiful. You
Oh,
already said how you came to Hot Metal. What, in terms of that feeling of welcome, tell me about that. How did that?
this is, I'm gonna have to grab a tissue.
That's okay.
So funny. I just think that it's such a beautiful moment in my life, because there's another time where, a monumental time where you're seeking and you're lost and you want something so desperately, and it comes together. Like I had said, Danielle and I had first started dating, and she had asked me if I'd be willing to go and volunteer with the homeless ministry. And I said, oh, absolutely. That sounds like awesome. And so we went, and I met a few members from the church on that day. And I went there to collect the lunches as well. And excuse me, upon walking in the door, it's not a churchy vibe. So if you go from, you know, marble statues and stained glass everywhere, like, it's just that you feel much more at ease. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful space, but it's just not stuffy. It feels like you can breathe in there and be yourself. So I'm meeting these people, and they were so welcoming and down to earth. And here I am, as they know I'm dating this woman, and she brought me in to go do this thing. And it was like, it was no big deal. It's not like, oh, you're the gay. No, like, you're just cool. So I did that. And then she had asked me, knowing my journey, because we had spoke about it before, that if I'd be willing to go to a Sunday service. And I said, yeah, I'm willing to try that. And I would really, this is a part of my life that's been missing for so long, and I'm more than willing to try it. And on that first service, everything was different. I'll just say that. But the biggest part that affected me the most was that when it came time for communion, at the time, Pastor Jeff, he said that you don't have to belong to this church or any church. If you're hungry for the gifts of God, you are welcome to this table. It wasn't sit in this chair. If you're not baptized, don't come up here. It was come as you are welcomed, and you are the beloved. And even his message that day stated it that way. And when I could get in that line and receive communion for the first time without guilt on my heart, and I could do it standing right behind the woman that I'm dating, like, it was that moment that I felt those two coming back and mending and sealing something that had been long separated.
I should have had.
Here, let me get you.
Thanks.
COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful story. And why we say those words still every week. Right. Because you never know who needs to hear it.
When we were on the PNC, and we were discerning between what are the most important aspects that we need to carry on to this next chapter, I firmly put that in my statement because it was so impactful to me. And it came down to, volunteering in the church, being an active member, and then Jeff and at the time Pastor Jim baptizing me was when you know in your heart and your mind where you belong and you're loved for exactly who you are, and they see you and they see the gifts that you bring to that community, and then you get baptized by those same people, it's like, there's no even words that I can say right now for that moment. It's that meaningful.
Yeah, what a beautiful moment, right? Where this community got to live into its best hopes, dreams, visions, right? Like promises of God, right? It got to be that for you, and to be that space where you get to hear that, and then proclaim that. Well,
yeah, I feel extremely thankful. And then Pastor Jeff actually married my wife and I, so that was we were so grateful, and that was such a beautiful moment too. That I sought this spiritual guidance, and I talked through and worked through a lot of these issues with. Now is marrying my wife, me and my wife. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and that's church at its best, right? Is being that place for these big moments, right? And
yes,
the fact that we could do that, that Hot Metal was that place where you could experience that after so long of not having a place to do that is just, I think God at work in the best way.
And I felt that 100%. And it's, those big ones, like you said, but even that small one, like he could have phrased that any way. You could phrase it in any, but just that fact that you don't have to be a specific way or say the exact right thing. If you just are hungering for those gifts of God, you are welcome here. And that is exactly what I was doing. I was hungering for those gifts. I was starving for them. And
yeah.
Haven't got my fill yet.
That's why we do it every week.
That's right.
Because I don't know that we could ever really get our fill, but especially for people with stories similar to yours where they were deprived for so long. This is what we do.
Right.
Thinking about Hot Metal into the future, right? What are hopes? You already, started hinting at this, but in terms of being open and affirming and being this place where others can experience what you've experienced, where do you see Hot Metal going?
I think that, having a presence, right? So in the Pride Parade and being outwardly showing, but then inwardly facing, meaning that the resources are there. So if we have individuals, that would stand up or provide that resource to somebody who's questioning or somebody who's been in a situation similar and would feel comfortable coming to those people and those individuals and saying, I share the story, or just in general, like I said, outlets and ways that which anybody in any part of that journey would feel comfortable coming in and speaking to, or just sitting in the seats, or gathering on the streets when there's not going to be one this year, but the Pride Parade, and just in every one of those facets, having a pillar that, like I said, that pillar would be set to anyone on any part of that journey, whether they're only just beginning to think this, or they've been thinking it for years and they don't know where they're at in terms of their sexuality and their faith. They could come and speak to and be seen.
What a beautiful vision. And thank you for living into that, right? Being, I think, one of those pillars of this community, right? I think everyone needs mentors in a variety of ways in our lives, right? But to be a person that people, number one, sharing your story this way, and so being public in that way of saying, I've been there, I've been on this journey, I've had the two that felt not compatible, and I have at least been in the process of trying to knit them back together.
Yeah.
I think is such a powerful statement and a powerful step in that direction, right? So yeah, being that place where these conversations can happen, and
Absolutely.
is so important. And are there any final words you want to leave?
I think that in terms of just this topic itself, anyone who's listening to this, I mean, if you feel as though you're in that scared or lonely or dark place, please reach out. And please, I mean, if it's not me, if it's, you, Pastor Aaron, if find that little beacon of light and reach out to it. Because I mean, this day, I mean, I see representation so many places. It's a beautiful thing. And that loneliness, in terms of not seeing yourself in the eyes of social media or television or whatever it might be. My dog is going nuts.
Okay.
Horrible timing, Bayo. Oh my God. Sorry. But just, okay, to briefly, no. Bayo. Sorry.
That's okay.
Just reach out and know you're not alone. That's all.
Well, thank you for being willing to be one of these people that people can see, at least, and I'm sure people can reach out to you through me, right?
I would love that. Yes.
Thank you for being a guinea pig.
No problem.
And for just your presence and your graciousness, your vulnerability. I know this is a hard, a vulnerable story to tell, a hard story to tell, an incomplete story to tell, because all of our stories are incomplete, and yet I'm so thankful for you and your presence here with us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure, truly.
Yeah. And like I said, we will have other videos like this and other ways that we are marking Pride. Next week, on Friday, we're having a Bible study panel conversation around some of what are called clobber texts, like the verses in the Bible that get thrown and used for these negative messaging, and how we as Christians can respond to them. So be on the lookout for information around that. Thanks again to Aubrey, and for all of you who are watching. I'm so thankful to be able to create this space and to be a witness to these stories. So may God bless you and keep you. Amen.
Amen.